For your Unit 5, Step 1, you're required to design an individual program card based on the consultation that you completed within Unit 4. So the program card should be at least 45 to 60 minutes long, and you need to take all the information gathered during your consultation into account to ensure that the planned session will suit your client's needs, goals, and abilities. So if you believe your client is a beginner, then the exercises and the intensities that you prescribe should link to a beginner's abilities, whereas if your client's more intermediate or advanced and you give them more intermediate and advanced exercises, or you are training them at higher intensities, both on the cardio and or the resistance, then that should marry up. The session plan must include a suitable warm-up, including prep stretches, a suitable main workout, which includes your cardiovascular and your weights. And we do want a variety of exercises in there, including some functional exercises, which we'll go through. You should then deliver a cool down and some cool down stretches. And then within your program card, there should be some very clear notes on how to perform the exercises and options of just putting in things like adaptations, regressions, and progressions as well. There is an exercise list that we provide. So if you go to that exercise list, there's a list of exercises for your legs, your back, your chest, your shoulders, and if you scroll down a little bit, biceps, triceps, some body weight stuff, and some alternative functional equipment. The main thing we will be looking for from there is that you're showing your understanding, first of all, of exercise balance. So your client has a number of exercises applied that all make sure all muscle groups are trained equally, that the exercises are then delivered in a certain order, so exercise sequence is correct. But we also want to see a variety of equipment being used. So we don't just want, for example, a leg press and then a chest press and then a seated row, 3 very basic machines, and that's all your client does. It's not very engaging. It's not really demonstrating your knowledge and understanding of the variety of exercises. So we want to see a variety of barbells, dumbbells, a couple of machines or cables, and then some use of what you may call functional equipment, but the use of a med ball, a kettlebell, a Viper, battle rope, something like that. And it could just be that you're squatting with a kettlebell or you're lunging with a kettlebell. No, that's all it needs to be. Or it could be something a little bit more advanced with a Viper. But it's just so you can give your client quite a variety of exercises to keep them engaged, give them lots of stimulus. And again, it illustrates your knowledge and understanding of all these different exercises. So the number of exercises is up to you. And then once you've got that, you can also you get a blank program card. So that's your opportunity to write your program up. You are provided with a completed program card. So in this example, we've got a warm-up. So your warm-up needs to consist of your warm-up CV, some dynamic stretches, and then some some static stretches. In your warm-up, which should be at least 5 minutes, the guidance is that you need to warm up for at least 5 minutes. So you might be 6, 7, 8, 9, depends on however long your session is going to be and what else you've got in there. As a minimum, we would need RPE, so it goes from 0 to show they're at rest to whatever number is appropriate for your client's ability. So if they're a beginner, it might be 3/4. If they're more advanced, it might be 4/5, 5/6, etc. You can use heart rate max percentages if you want, however, you won't be expected to measure those during a session. And in particular, in the notes, here's where we want 3 or 4 bullet points that clearly explain the teaching points to these exercises. So imagine you ask your client to go do this exercise. They might not ever have done it before, so you want to give them very clear teaching points on how to do it. And yes, there is a typo there where it should say RP5 instead of RP6, so apologies for that. We then should do some dynamics. So the dynamics, again, should be chosen according to the complexity of your client's ability. So if your client's quite advanced, then hopefully they can do these sort of exercises. You may even want to put in things like inchworms or press-ups if it's appropriate. However, if your client's a beginner, you may just keep things very simple. You may just do some squats by themselves. You may do some arm swings by themselves. You might do a bit of a trunk rotation by itself. But the main thing is that the upper body, the lower body, and the core has been mobilized and warmed up during those dynamics. Normally, anything around 10, 12, 15 reps will be suffice. With your prep stretches for 10 seconds, to begin with, we would say stick to the big groups, so the quad, the hamstrings, the chest, and the back. However, if in the consultation your client mentions having tight calves or tight shoulders, for example, then that would be a good opportunity to show some specificity. In your main CV, you can list an exercise of your choice. Again, we will prefer different exercises. So if your client warms up on a treadmill, we wouldn't want them to then do their main CV on a treadmill and then their cool down on a treadmill. Show us some variety in those exercises. The guidance should be for at least 20 minutes. But when you film it, you may only do 10 minutes, which you'll get in later guidance. The RPE matches up to what you've done before. So we warm them up to an RPE 5. So we are training them at an RPE 5. And again, we've got 3 or 4 very specific teaching points on how to perform that exercise. If we go on to the next bit, we've got the resistance section. So we've given you a full program. So you can see that, first of all, it's balanced. We've got a compound for the legs. We've got a push in. We've got a back. We've got some shoulders, we've got bis and tris, and some core. In the core, we're using a slam bag. We're also using cables. We're using cables here. We're using dumbbells, barbells, machines. So just a variety of exercises. In this instance, 2 sets of 15 with 45 seconds rest would suggest that we're going for endurance, most probably for a beginner. And again, on down this side, we've got very specific teaching points for each and every exercise. And what would be good as well, feedback for this document here now would be, could you add in an alternative exercise maybe? So could you write in a progression or a regression for your client to do? So you could put, instead of a back squat, complete a leg press. Instead of a dumbbell chest press, use a machine chest press. So that'll be extra points there if you wanted to put that in. And then finally, towards your end, you need to plan for your cool down. So again, a different exercise just for your client's benefit, to get them to learn stuff and experience new exercises. At least 5 minutes. The RPE is coming down from a 5 to a 0, so we're kind of reversing that warm-up effect. Specific teaching points again. And we've then applied some cool down stretches. In particular, these ones are 20 seconds rather than 10 seconds. We're sticking to the major muscle groups again, so lats, pecs, hamstrings, quads, but a little bit of variation here by getting the client to lie down and use a towel, and turning that into a developmental stretch rather than just a maintenance stretch. And then finally, there's a question here at the end. How could the exercises in this session be adapted if the client were not able to participate? So there's some boxes here. So for example, if your client wasn't able to perform the rower, give us a regression or a progression to show how you would make it easier for them. So what I would want here is, if your client is not able to do this session, for every single exercise, we don't just want you to say, reduce the weight, reduce the weight, reduce the weight. There's a little bit more variation and alternative in how you can adapt a session. So whether it's use an alternative to the lat pull down, or you could increase the rest time, or maybe only perform 1 set. In this example, you could use something like a kettlebell squat or a leg press rather than the back squat. Or in this bodyweight exercise, you could remove the slam bag, or you could offer an alternative exercise for the core. So just a bit of variety, and try to think about your gym, where you train, and what you would do instead of this. And then finally, to assist you in this writing of the program, this is the document your assessor will complete. So is the session looking like it's going to be 45 to 60 minutes long? Do you use safe and effective session structure? So that's in particular about exercise balance and exercise sequence. Do you select safe and effective exercises and equipment for the warm-up? Do you select safe and effective exercises for the main workout? Do you select safe and effective exercises for the cool-down? Do you select exercises that were functional for the client and his and her needs, wants, and goals? And then describe how he or she would adapt and modify exercises and equipment to regress, progress, and accommodate clients when necessary. So that's the last question. Make sure you answer that last question with plenty of detail. And then do you record the session plan in appropriate format? Once they've done that, they will either be a tick, you're passed and competent, a bullet point, you're passed, but there's some feedback to be aware of. A cross would mean that it's an instant refer, and they will give you some feedback, and you'll be able to resubmit your program card. If it's a Q, then they will arrange a phone call or a webinar with you, and they may just have a question to ask you about what you've submitted. Now, if there is a Q, when they ask you that question, they will let you know that depending on how you answer, that question could then either turn into a cross or a bullet point. If it turns into a cross, then it would mean that the assessment is refer and you will need to resubmit something. If it's a bullet point, then it will just be feedback to say that you are competent, but there's a little bit of feedback for you. Based on those factors, they will then tick either pass or refer, And then further down, they'll leave a bit of a list of feedback telling you what is good and any other feedback, whether there's anything to improve on or things to consider going forward.